Hi guys, welcome and thank you for joining us. You're watching Open Studio right here on Cape Town TV. I'm Danny Kamba. I've got Jesse with me here in studio, and we're going to talk about everything that's got to do with creativity, creative mind, and creative thinking. All right, Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. Speaking to you before the show, I just there's so much passion coming from you in what it is that you are doing. So, for those that's watching for the first time, that do not know you, seeing you for the first time, can you just give us a brief about who you are, what you do, and why you're doing
Oh dear, that's a big question.
it?
So I am Jesse,
Yeah.
and I've got a funny accent because I grew up in Finland most of my life,
Uh,
but I've been out of that country for 30 years, and in
mhm.
South Africa now 23 years already.
23 years. Okay.
That's it. And I suppose because of my own
Mhm.
experiences, I've always been very passionate about people who are ostracized or who don't quite fit into that bell curve.
Mhm.
And in countries that have a bit more hardship than Finland does, those kind of outcomes can be pretty detrimental.
Mhm.
So I ended up working with those people, the ones that are invisible or difficult or not your most welcome lot in
Yeah.
many places.
Wow. So, when you speak about countries that are not, like you mentioned, as fortunate or as developed as Finland, and what are those countries? Which are the countries that you've been able to work with so far?
So I used to work in development sector and working for Finnish Foreign Ministry. We were supporting poverty-related projects,
Okay.
mainly in the human rights and poverty area in 4 countries. So Swaziland, Lesotho, South Africa, as well as Botswana. So I was very lucky for 15 years
Yeah.
to be on the ground in those countries a lot and see what is possible to do, what kind of solutions actually are sustainable, and learned heck of a lot about our mistakes. So
Yeah.
I came out of those 15 years very humble and
Wow.
understanding what the limitations of
Mhm.
just monetary aid can be.
Wow. So, what has your experience been like? Being here in South Africa, in the mother city, like we call it.
It's been really amazing. I
Mhm.
mean, hard in many ways because, as I said, my heart kind of ticks for the forgotten ones, and I've got a curious mind, so I'm not a
Yeah.
social worker. I would like to work with systems and understand how does a system work? Why is it that it produces certain kinds of outcomes for certain groups of people? And how do we shift those systems? What
Yeah.
does it mean? How do you work with government differently? How do you work with policy? How do you work with residents? How do you work with NGOs and
Mhm.
business? And how does it all come together and suddenly produce something else?
Yeah.
And that fascinates me. So more than just the individual suffering,
Mhm.
which is obviously the kind of base, the foundation for the work, but it's the system that could then replicate and bring good things
Yeah.
to scale.
Wow. So tell us about your programs. Like you mentioned earlier on that you've got programs that you are running, which is also in line with what you just mentioned, especially with the systems. Because there are various systems put in place for various things. But are they working? So if you can just give us a little bit, a brief about the programs that you guys are running.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Hey, what works and why when they don't work?
Mhm.
So the particular group that I've been interested in working with are so-called chronic homeless people.
Yeah.
These would be individuals that have lived on the streets for years, if not decades, and often have severe addictions
Mm.
and mental health issues. So kind of the people that when we come across them, we kind of look away,
Yeah.
not because we want to be harsh or rude, but because it kind of makes one feel helpless. What do
Mhm.
you do? How do you help? Aggressive beggars, the petty crime,
Yeah.
the little shacks that you see coming up in our parks and encampments. So
Mhm.
that's been the group that I've been interested in
Mhm.
and looking at particularly from their angle. How do you reintegrate? How do you create options, services?
Yeah.
How do you bring them back
Mhm.
in a way that guarantees dignity and gives them a voice as well? That
Yeah.
it's not just passive service recipients, but real players,
Yeah.
actors, intelligent, creative people as we all are.
Wow. So what measures has been put in place, to try and curb or to bring about changes to these issues, that you've just mentioned.
So there is a lot of services. The problem was that I suppose especially the drugs crisis,
Mm-hmm.
you could even say that it's an addiction crisis in not just Cape Town, but in many of the cities. It took people by surprise.
Yeah.
And we just didn't have services that reached that group very well. And so it meant suddenly that in the past maybe 10, 15 years, you've got this increasing group of people who fall outside all of it. And so this meant that whilst you have amazing soup kitchens, we do have really good state mental health systems. We have hospitals and we have developmental programs. Because this particular group, their lives were so chaotic and dysfunctional, it was almost like you needed something to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And that's where we started. So I was working with a team of people at community courts. There's 3 community courts in Cape Town. And we were seeing more and more of this clientele. And we started innovating. You mentioned creativity in the beginning.
Yeah.
It was pure creativity. What could we do? Let's chat to them. Let's ask what they want.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. They were asking for work.
Wow.
And so we thought, let's try it out. And together with Central City Improvement District and City of Cape Town, we created a first work program that, actually, funny enough, exactly to the day 6 years ago started.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of Streetscapes.
Is it still going?
So we now have 10 social enterprises that employ 80 people. We've got 3 houses that offer housing first programs for people that have active addictions but want to come from those addictions and develop through them. And we provide the psychosocial services and a bridging to mental health services.
Wow. And is this scattered all over Cape Town, or is it a specific area in which you're currently working at?
It started in the city center, and possibly because of our close partnership with CCID, and then expanded because the problems are everywhere to observatories. So we've got a partnership here with the Ops Improvement District, a house and a work program here as well.
Okay.
And then we've got now a farm, rehabilitative farm in Curlsrip.
All right. Wow. So we're going to take a quick break, Jesse. When we come back, I just want to, touch a bit more on Streetscape, and just see about, because the farm thing sounds very interesting. And for those that's watching at home, guys, do not go anywhere. We'll be back right after this with Jesse. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back. You're watching Open Studio right here in Cape Town TV. I've got Jess with me in studio, and we're talking about Streetscape. All right. So earlier on, Jess, you mentioned that if we're looking at, within our communities, one of the issues that we face, and I'm sure many will agree with us, is the drugs. And one thing that Streetscape is doing is rehabilitation farm. Is that what you mentioned? So just to clarify, just for me to understand, what do you expect from this farm? What can we expect? What is happening? How are you helping these people?
So the farm is almost like a mini cosmos of Streetscapes, because in a farm, you have where you live. So you need a house, you need a family kind of setup almost. You've got work and you've got support.
Yeah.
And so all of those kind of parts come together on a farm, whereas in town we've got separate places for work, separate places for living. Okay. So farm is quite a special place, and it allows also, like, one of the things we wanted to test, like, you can imagine when you've got city slickers who've been on the streets of Cape Town for a decade or two, moving to Curls River, we thought that could be a bit of a test. Although people said we want to move, we wondered, are they really going to like it there, or do they miss the streets and their usual surroundings? And we found out people do like it there. They built a strong community, bonds. So it's not just, a home is not just a house and the walls. It is that community and feeling a sense of belonging and ownership. Yeah. That this is ours and we have a voice and a whole set of rights here. We're not passive recipients of just temporary support like what shelters can be. This is home, this is our house, this is our farm.
Wow. And I mean, it's important when you give somebody a sense of belonging, where they, like you say, it's a home somewhere, it's a place where they can come to and call home. So, besides the farm, you mentioned other interesting points that, Streetscape is also doing in other areas of development. If you can just take us through that as well.
Yes, so I love being creative and I
Yeah.
love innovating. So we've been looking at how do you innovate around work? How do you innovate around living? How do you innovate around mental health and addictions? So in terms of most of our innovation, it's built on what works elsewhere. So we read a lot and we go through a lot of research. And people tend to look at research like it's boring and kind of full of cobwebs, and it's not that at all. There's amazing things that are happening elsewhere that we can learn from and then adapt here. So for instance, around work, we started with simple things like basic farming and street sweeping and helping with wheelie bins and the basic kind of stuff. But now we've moved into like green stuff, technology. We've got a laundromat that's off grid. So where you've got a closed water system where you use harvested water, clean that same water to do more washing, and it's doing it with incredible tiny microorganisms and filters and using solar power. So you can start innovating and doing really fantastic stuff. So people used to come to our gardens because they love the veg, but now they come and see this kind of future and futuristic developments, and you don't normally associate that with chronic homes. So it's not like your dusty, old-fashioned granny socks kind of stuff. It's cool and hip and happening, and that's what makes it all exciting.
Oh yes, oh yes. Wow, I mean, there's a lot of development that's happening, and I can see the excitement, when you speak about it. So just remind us again, for those that's watching, like once again, for those that's hearing about Streetscapes for the first time, how long has this project or this organization been going on for? And for you guys to, to reach such incredible milestones and incredible development, it must have taken you a long time.
6 years, my friend,
6
to
years.
the day. But I think it is like, I'm definitely not alone. We've got an incredible team of people. And it includes my colleagues, but it also includes those that have been on the streets. And it's a co-creation. So I know certain things, and I'm good at research, and I know what's happening in the world, and I know how to liaise with stakeholders. But I don't have the lived experience of the street. I don't know what the needs are. I don't know what works. So that's where we need these partnerships. And so you can almost see the Streetscapes being like an enterprise of 50 people that constantly come together and co-create, change, tweak, plan. If we need to make a turn, we make a turn. But it's always based on what is in the best interest of the clients, not what's in the best interest of the staff.
Wow. So in terms of funding, how has the organization be able to stay afloat? Because I mean, we've come from a horrible period of the pandemic. We are still, in that period of the pandemic. How has the organization be able to stay afloat and still produce such quality work?
Funding, in the sector is always the million-dollar question, isn't it? But I suppose when you do something that has an impact, so we do find people coming to us. We work very closely with improvement districts because they are left to deal with these issues. Same with the city of Cape Town, provincial government. There wasn't too many people that were willing and able to work with this group of individuals. So in the strangest possible ways, that's one of our raw cards. We work with the population that there's so little else happening with, and we produce results. So people move off the streets. 85% of our clients move off the streets within 6 months. And remember, these are people that were, some of them, born on the streets. So it's quite a feat in that way, and it means that then fundraising is easier. We've got foreign funders, we've got local funders. COVID, sadly, we used to have a beautiful group of Long Street small businesses. And those businesses no longer exist, many of them, sadly. So our Long Street project is kind of tuned down quite a bit, but we're still there.
You're still there, you're still going strong. Wow. I mean, funding does a lot or a major difference in any development, you don't, not everybody, needs it, but when it's there, it's just a big asset to have, it's amazing asset to have. And well, I mean, you guys have been doing the most with the least. So that's something good. I could imagine. So we're going to take another short break. When we come back, then we're just going to continue and speak a little bit more about, your programs, and just to sum it up a bit more for those that's watching or for those that might tune in late, just to get an idea of what it is that we are talking about today. All right, so guys, we'll be back after this break. Don't go anywhere. Hey guys, welcome back. It's almost at the end of the show, but you're starting time to learn something new because Jesse's with me in studio and we're talking about everything that's got to do with creativity and also streetscape. All right, you took us earlier on into a journey as to what you guys are doing to help, to try and bring about development within communities that are facing hardship in terms of poverty, gangsterism, and and so forth. So, just to for those that's tuning in now, it's getting to see you, getting to hear what this conversation is about, just to give us a summary, of what is creative thinking when you speak about creative thinking and what is Artscape really doing.
Creative thinking is mostly like any problem solving. We tend to jump to the solutions, but I think it is, and I think Albert Einstein said it himself, that if he has a problem to solve, he will think of the problem for 99% of the time and 1% of the solution. So you've got to understand really what you're dealing with. And I suppose in our creative processes, we every day focus on learning, on understanding what it really is that we're doing for what population. So when we talk about homeless, there's many different types of homeless. And within even the chronic homeless group, you would have individuals with more severe or less severe psychological health issues, more or less severe drug use issues. There's a difference between stimulant users and heroin users. There's a difference between those that use alcohol. So there's all these different categories. And like our creative thinking is really around understanding the problem well and then deciding solutions and measuring those solutions. It doesn't maybe sound as exciting as a canvas and an artist that puts something on it. But it's exciting because it produces then real results, and we can do things in an affordable, scalable way. And that really gets me excited.
Wow. Now, to take us to a journey once again about Artscape, you spoke about the programs that you are running, especially the rehabilitation farm, which I find to be very, very interesting.
So the Streetscapes is still based on the three pillars, main pillars. So you need a place to stay if you want to turn your life around. You need income and agency around that income, making choices about that money. And then normally after these two, you can start reintegrating with your family, you can start dealing with your mental health issues, you can deal with your addiction issues, and also understanding what addiction really is. Because we tend to have ideas what it is. And it's like this big mystery. Everybody has the two uncles or nephews or cousins, and one managed to change their life around and one didn't. And we seem to be clueless. Why is it that it works with some and others? And we can see, we know what works. We kind of understand that it's often the invisible. It's understanding that it's not just, Jesse or Danny wanting to stop. It's about whether you have enough recovery capital, your internal and your external resources, so you can actually make those changes. And that means home, that means friends, that means income, that means mental health, that means a whole huge pizza or pizza slices that need to be in place before people can really do it. And we often forget it.
Wow. And how important would you say is family support when it comes to, rehabilitation and wanting to change your life around?
It's hugely important. And when I say it, I mean family can come in many ways. So family isn't necessarily your biological family. It could be the family that you create around you. But very often, some of the sorest points that people have in their lives, especially women, is around their children that they may have lost contact with years ago and rebuilding relationships, or fathers with their sons, or children who've forgotten their parents and trying to reconnect. So it is a very fundamental bond in our lives. And if it's possible, we do try and mend and find those bonds again.
Wow. Well, I mean, the organization has been growing. You've been doing a lot to try and bring about stability and balance to the struggles and also to opportunities, especially for those people that are in the heart of the struggle. And it's not just financial, it's not just food, but as you mentioned, mental health as well. It's addiction and all that. So, looking into the future, where do you see the organization going? Are there any future plans, any future project that will be taking place in the near future that you think will be beneficial, to the public?
There's always lots on the go, but one of the things that really excites me is an idea of kind of this green technology around housing. So one of the problems with a lot of the housing projects is that they burn down easier. We hear about these horrendous fires, in locations. So we're looking at materials that are built from alien vegetation. So all that stuff that needs to be yanked out the ground, and that's made into boards that's not burning easy. And we're looking at building houses in Culture by getting small units and a little
Is
village
that
going.
somehow fireproof?
Yes.
Okay.
100% fireproof. So you would have a safe place. And this material, obviously, it's not just for us. It could be amazing for many very dense living environments.
Yeah.
But of course, we have all around us.
Yeah, because I mean, around us is so many informal settlements, you know, and you hear of this domino effect that when the one house burns, the other one burns, and we go from one family not having a home to 7, 8, 9 families because of one fire. And I mean, that is a project that will really, really bring about difference within the communities.
And think about it, if it is alien vegetation, so you're solving one issue by taking it off the ground so we have more water and doing something good with it, but it's not just dumped. Now, those kinds of things are quite exciting and creative.
Creative, recycling.
All of it.
Wow. So it's really about thinking outside the box, you know, because we've got all the tools at our disposal. It's just about knowing when and how to utilize them.
That's it.
Wow. So if there's anybody that's watching right now, you know, you mentioned that funding is a bit tight, and, you know, we're coming from a pandemic. We're also in a pandemic, you know, and a little bit of fund will help things progress a bit more and a bit swifter and a bit quicker. So if there's anybody watching right now that would like to support your organization and support the initiative, you know, how can they do so? How can they get a hold of you?
They can get hold of us either by just Googling Khulisa Streetscapes. Khulisa is Khulisa and Streetscapes.
Yeah.
Or they can email me, and it's Jesse, JESSE, at Khulisa, KHULISA.org.za.
And that's anytime.
Anytime.
Wow, thanks a lot, Jess. So, you know, you just mentioned to us what are the future plans for the organization. What about you? You know, you mentioned all these places that you've been at, how much excitement it brings you to work within communities and with people. You know, what are your personal future plans that you want to do?
Yeah, what would be my personal plans would just make this bigger and scale it up. I'm not very keen on leaving South Africa anytime soon. If I have to do something, I'll go sailing for a year. And that means I need to learn how to sail and get a boat. Otherwise, where there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, definitely. Where there's a will, there's a way. Thank you so much. And that's a beautiful message to end off with. You know, so thank you so much for coming through the show today, Jesse, and speaking to us about this amazing initiative that you're doing. And we can only hope that it grows from here. And for those that's watching at home, I hope that you learned something new today and that you're able to take something, you know, for yourself, for someone else, and just grow. All right, like Jess just mentioned, when there's a will, there's a way. So thank you so much for being part of today's conversation. Till next time, bye-bye.